In a world that often feels consumed by chaos and indifference, acts of kindness shine like beacons of hope. It's these small gestures that remind us of the humanity we all share, even when we're buried in the mundanity of our daily lives. But what if one act of kindness led to something far greater, an unexpected journey filled with secrets that could change everything? This is the story of a father's love, a daughter's compassion, and the hidden truths that lie just beneath the surface of everyday life. Meet Tom, an everyday father, navigating the complexities of life and parenthood. Like many of us, he juggles work, responsibilities, and the challenges of raising a curious and compassionate daughter named Lily. At just 10 years old, Lily possesses a heart as big as her dreams. She sees the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be. And on one seemingly ordinary day, her heart leads her to do something extraordinary. On that day, Lily had spotted something unusual. As she played in their backyard, she watched the garbage truck rumble down the street, its lights flashing and the sound of mechanical arms lifting bins. While other kids would turn away, immersed in their games, Lily noticed the solitary figure of a garbage man, doing his job with a quiet determination. With a burst of inspiration, she decided to create a thank you card, a simple token of appreciation for someone often overlooked in their day-to-day hustle. "Hey, wait," she called out, her tiny voice echoing against the backdrop of the busy morning. The garbage man paused, turning with surprise as she approached. What happened next would set in motion a series of events that neither Tom nor Lily could ever have anticipated. The garbage man, a man named Jim, smiled warmly, accepting her heartfelt gift. Little did they know, this act of kindness would unveil a hidden story, one filled with secrets from Jim's past that would change their lives forever. Tom watched, a mix of pride and curiosity swelling in his chest. Who is this man? He wondered. Something about Jim intrigued him. As the garbage man resumed his route, Tom felt an inexplicable pull to learn more about this stranger who had just touched his daughter's life so profoundly. What lay beneath Jim's unassuming exterior? What hidden story was woven into his daily routine? Driven by an overwhelming need to protect and understand, Tom embarked on a quest. He decided to track Jim, shadowing him through the neighborhood, piecing together fragments of the man's life from snippets of conversations with residents and clues left behind in the debris of discarded lives. But as he dug deeper, Tom unearthed whispers of a past, shrouded in shadows, rumors of lost connections, a long-ago tragedy, and a secret that could unravel everything he thought he knew. As Tom delves further into Jim's life, he realizes that not all secrets are meant to stay buried. Each revelation sends a chill down his spine, igniting a fire of curiosity and dread. What if his daughter's innocent act of kindness had opened the door to something he wasn't prepared for? Would this journey lead to understanding, or would it unearth pain and regret? Stay tuned, because the story doesn't end here. Join us as we unravel the threads of kindness, mystery, and hidden truths in Father Tracks. Garbage Man, after his daughter's act of kindness, discovers a hidden secret. What will Tom uncover about Jim, and how will it forever change their lives? You won't want to miss this incredible journey that lies ahead. The world outside was waking up, but Tom felt a sense of urgency that wouldn't let him relax. His thoughts were consumed by Lily's encounter with Jim, the garbage man, and the inexplicable connection he felt to this stranger. He couldn't shake the image of Jim's grateful smile, nor could he ignore the nagging feeling that there was more to the story than met the eye. Growing up, Tom had been taught to always lend a helping hand, to always be kind, but life had a way of testing those lessons. Memories flooded back his mother's warm smile as she volunteered at the local shelter, his father's stories about community heroes who often went unnoticed. These lessons shaped him into the father he was today, instilling a sense of duty to protect and uplift those around him. But as the years passed, he had watched that sense of community erode, replaced by a hurried lifestyle where kindness was often lost in the noise. Now he felt compelled to honor Lily's gesture, to dig deeper into Jim's life, and uncover the hidden depths behind that one simple moment. After finishing his coffee, Tom grabbed his jacket and hopped into his car. He decided to follow the garbage truck today, hoping to learn more about Jim. The thought of tracking him down felt both thrilling and unsettling. As he drove through the neighborhood, he spotted the familiar bright yellow garbage truck making its way down the street. Tom maintained a safe distance, his heart pounding as he watched Jim get out of the truck, the early morning sun reflecting off his worn-out cap. With each stop, Tom took mental notes. Jim moved with purpose, lifting bins with ease, a testament to years of hard work. He noticed Jim greet neighbors with a nod or a smile, Moments that spoke of familiarity and routine, yet hinted at deeper connections. Tom couldn't help but wonder about Jim's life. Who was he beyond this job? Why did his daughter's simple act resonate so profoundly with him? What secrets lay hidden beneath that surface? As Tom watched, he caught snippets of conversations between Jim and the residents. One woman thanked him for helping her father last winter when his snow shovel broke. Another mentioned a missing pet, and Jim's reassuring words seemed to comfort her. With each interaction, Tom's curiosity deepened. Then, he overheard something that sent chills down his spine. A man, clearly agitated, whispered, "You're still looking for him, aren't you?" Jim's face hardened at the mention of someone Tom couldn't hear. Tom's heart raced. Who was this him, and what did it have to do with Jim? After the garbage truck moved on, Tom parked and approached the neighbor who had been speaking with Jim. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Do you know Jim well?" The neighbor eyed Tom suspiciously, but eventually nodded. "Yeah, we've known him for years. He's a good guy, hard worker. But lately, I've noticed he's been different." "Different? How so?" Tom pressed, his heart racing with anticipation. The neighbor hesitated, glancing around as if making sure no one was listening. "There's been talk about his past. Rumors about a family he lost a long time ago. People say he's haunted by it, still searching for something." Haunted? Tom's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could Jim's past hold the key to understanding his present? What had happened that could cause such pain? As the neighbor continued to speak, Tom realized he had to find out more. If Lily's kindness had opened a door, he needed to step through and uncover the truth. That evening, Tom sat in front of his computer, scouring social media and local news articles for any mention of Jim. Hours passed as he delved deeper into the mystery. He discovered a few vague references, a missing person report from years ago, a tragic accident in the same neighborhood, but no concrete details. Feeling frustrated yet determined, Tom decided to expand his search. He started reaching out to old friends, family members, anyone who might have known Jim. "Can you believe this? A garbage man hiding secrets," he muttered to himself, the absurdity of the situation fueling his resolve. One of Tom's old friends, Mike, had connections in the community and was intrigued by the story. "I've heard whispers about Jim, but I can't say I know him well. You should talk to Sarah. She used to volunteer at the shelter. She might know something." Tom thanked him and made a note to reach out to Sarah in the morning. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of a significant breakthrough. The cafe buzzed with activity as Tom sat across from Sarah, a woman in her late 30s with a warm smile and kind eyes. "So, you're investigating Jim, huh?" she said, taking a sip of her coffee. "I just want to understand him better. My daughter had a brief encounter with him, and it felt important." Sarah nodded knowingly. "I get that. Jim has been through a lot. He used to be a teacher before life took a turn. There was a family tragedy, something about a child." The mention of a child struck Tom like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? What happened?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "They lost their daughter in a car accident. Jim blamed himself for a long time. It changed him. He threw himself into work, trying to escape the pain. Some say he's still searching for answers, or perhaps even redemption." Tom felt the weight of those words. Lily's innocent kindness had opened up a world of grief and sorrow, but it also raised more questions than it answered. What if Jim was still carrying the weight of that loss, living in the shadow of his past? Tom left the cafe, his mind racing. He felt empathy for Jim, yet he also couldn't help but wonder if he had placed Lily in danger by encouraging her to connect with someone so troubled. Could her act of kindness have inadvertently reopened old wounds? The internal conflict simmered within him. He wanted to protect his daughter, yet he recognized the power of compassion. Determined to face the truth, Tom returned to follow Jim again. As the garbage truck made its rounds, he mustered the courage to approach Jim, feeling a mix of anxiety and purpose. "Hey Jim," he called out, heart pounding. Jim paused, his expression shifting to one of surprise. "Can I help you?" "I'm Tom, Lily's father. She wanted to thank you for your kindness yesterday. I just wanted to say how much it meant to her." Jim's demeanor softened for a moment. "That was very sweet of her," he replied, but Tom could see a flicker of something darker in his eyes, a hint of vulnerability he had never noticed before. "I've heard a little about you," Tom ventured cautiously. "You used to be a teacher, right?" Jim stiffened, his eyes narrowing. "I did, but that's a long time ago. People move on. But do you ever talk about it? What happened?" Tom pressed, feeling a mix of concern and urgency. The moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken words. Jim's gaze hardened, and for a moment, Tom thought he might walk away. "Not here. Not now," Jim finally said, his voice low. Tom felt a sense of defeat wash over him, but he refused to give up. Jim's pain was palpable, and he had to tread carefully. "I just want to help," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Your past doesn't define you. You can find peace." Jim studied him, the tension thickening the air around them. "You don't know anything about my past, Tom. Leave it alone." Tom stepped back, his heart heavy with uncertainty. He couldn't shake the feeling that Jim was on the brink of revealing something monumental, but that fear held him back. The deeper Tom ventured into this world, the more he realized how fragile the balance between kindness and pain could be. As Tom returned home that night, he found Lily asleep, the remnants of her day's activities scattered around the living room. He looked at her peaceful face and felt a swell of love mixed with worry. Was he doing the right thing? Was he endangering her by pursuing Jim's story? Or was he providing a path toward healing? Later that night, as Tom continued to research, he stumbled upon an article from years ago, a story about the tragic accident that took Jim's daughter. It detailed how the community rallied around Jim after the tragedy, but there was a strange detail that caught his eye. A mention of an unidentified man who had been seen near the scene of the accident. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. Could there be a connection between Jim's past and the man mentioned in the article? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to align in a way that both terrified and intrigued him. He knew he had to follow this lead. The next day, Tom planned to visit the local library to see if he could dig up more information about the accident. He wanted to understand the full story behind Jim's grief, to uncover the layers of secrets that seemed to envelop the man and his family. But he also felt the looming specter of danger if there were unresolved issues from the past. What if they came to a head now? The weight of his investigation pressed on him. He had begun to feel like an intruder in Jim's life, yet his instincts told him that there was more to be learned, more at stake. With each passing day, the tension increased. Tom found himself haunted by the idea that he might unearth something he couldn't handle. Each interview, each new piece of information, seemed to build toward an inevitable confrontation. The stakes were rising, and he was teetering on the edge of a revelation that could change everything both for himself and for Jim. Desperate for clarity, Tom contacted the local police department, hoping to access the records from the accident. The officer he spoke with was hesitant. "Those records are sensitive, especially involving minors. We can't just release that information." Tom's frustration flared. "I'm not looking to sensationalize anything. I'm trying to help someone who's struggling. You don't understand. Jim needs closure. His family needs closure." The officer paused, considering Tom's words. "All right, I can't promise anything, but meet me tomorrow. I'll see what I can do." As Tom hung up, he felt a mix of dread and anticipation. What secrets lay hidden in those records? What truths were waiting to be uncovered? The next day, Tom met the officer at the station, his heart racing. They sat in a small room lined with file cabinets, the atmosphere heavy with unsaid words. "So, what's the story?" the officer asked, looking skeptical. "I just want to understand Jim's past," Tom replied, feeling the weight of his quest pressing down on him. "I think there's something he's never resolved." The officer nodded slowly, his expression softening. "All right, let's see what we can find." As they flipped through the records, Tom's hands trembled. Each page turned, felt like a step deeper into Jim's haunted world. And then they found it a mention of the unidentified man, described as suspicious, seen near the scene of the accident. The officer looked at Tom, eyebrows raised. "Why do you think this matters?" "There's nothing concrete here. It matters because Jim's carrying this burden. If there's a chance he can find closure, I have to help him," Tom insisted, the urgency palpable in his voice. Just as they were about to close the file, something caught Tom's eye, an old photograph clipped to report. He stared at image, his breath hitching in his throat. It was a blurry shot of a man standing near the scene, but it was Jim. "No, it can't be," Tom muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "What is it?" the officer asked, leaning closer. "Look at this man. This is Jim." The revelation struck them both like a thunderclap. What had Jim been doing there? Why hadn't he mentioned this before? Tom felt a wave of dread wash over him. The truth was unraveling, but it was darker and more complicated than he ever imagined. Jim was not just a garbage man, he was a man haunted by his own past, and that past was intertwined with tragedy. The implications of this discovery twisted in Tom's mind. Had Jim been hiding from his own memories? Was he, in some way, complicit in accident that took his daughter's life? Tom's thoughts raced. Should he confront Jim with this information? Was it right to expose his pain, to force him to relive that moment? As sun set, casting long shadows in Tom's living room, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. He knew he had to confront Jim and reveal what he had discovered. But he also recognized that this conversation could either break Jim or finally set him free. With his heart pounding, Tom prepared himself for what lay ahead. He had stepped into a world of pain and mystery, but he refused to turn back. It was time to seek truth, even if it meant tearing open old wounds. The air crackled with tension as he drove toward Jim's neighborhood, his mind racing with possibilities. He was on the verge of uncovering a secret that could change everything, and he had no idea what would happen when the truth finally emerged. As Tom parked his car, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation. Jim was waiting for him, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. Tom stepped out of his car, the cool evening air nipping at his skin. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that made everything feel amplified. Each step toward Jim's front door echoed in his mind, his heart pounding like a war drum. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the precipice of something monumental, something that could irrevocably change Jim's life and his own. As he raised his hand to knock, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. What if revealing the truth pushed Jim over the edge? Would it be worth the risk? But he quickly quashed the doubt. Jim deserved to know the truth about his past. With a resolute breath, he knocked firmly. The door creaked open, revealing Jim's familiar figure, but there was a new heaviness in his gaze. "Tom," he said, his voice low. "What brings you here?" Tom swallowed hard. "Can we talk?" "It's important." Jim hesitated, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Sure, come in." Inside, the air felt thick with unspoken words. The living room was modest, filled with remnants of family life. A worn sofa, framed photographs of happier times, and a few toys scattered on the floor. Tom took a seat, feeling the weight of Jim's scrutiny. "What's going on?" Jim asked, his brow furrowing. Tom paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've been digging into the past. Your past." At the mention of the past, Jim stiffened, his expression hardening. "Why would you do that? You promised you wouldn't dig too deep." "I know, but I found something," Tom pressed on. "Something that could help you. Something you need to know." Jim's gaze darkened. "I don't want to talk about it. I've moved on." Tom felt a surge of frustration. "You haven't moved on, Jim. You're carrying this weight, and I think it's time you faced it. I found a photograph of you near the scene of the accident." Jim went pale, a flash of recognition passing over his features. "What do you mean?" "An unidentified man was seen there, and the police have a photograph," Tom explained, leaning in. "It's you, Jim. You were there that day, and I think it's tied to why you haven't been able to let go." Jim's hands trembled slightly, and for a moment, Tom feared he might break down. That can't be right. I don't remember. I've tried to forget." "Maybe it's time to remember," Tom urged gently. "You deserve closure. We can face this together." But Jim shook his head vehemently. "No? You don't understand. Some things are better left buried. I get it, but think about your family. This isn't just about you anymore. Your wife and son, don't you want them to understand? To heal?" At the mention of his family, Jim's expression shifted, anger flaring in his eyes. "You think you know what's best for me? You don't know anything." "I know that you're suffering," Tom replied, voice steady. "And I know that facing this pain might be the only way to truly heal. Let me help you, Jim. Please." The tension hung heavy in the air, a tightrope strung between them. Jim looked away, conflicted, but Tom could see the internal battle raging within him. "Why can't you just leave it alone?" Jim shouted suddenly, startling Tom. "You're digging up things that should stay buried." "Because I care." Tom shot back, his own frustration bubbling over. "I care about you, Jim, and I can't stand by while you torture yourself." Jim's expression hardened. "You think you're a savior? That by exposing my past, you'll make things better? You have no idea what you're getting into." Tom's heart raced. Jim was on the edge, and Tom knew he had to tread carefully. "Then help me understand. What really happened that day?" For a moment, Jim looked as if he might break down. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, but he clamped his jaw tight, unwilling to yield. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the street outside, breaking the tension. Both men turned, startled. Tom's instincts kicked in, and he rushed to the window to see what had happened. As he peered out, he felt his heart drop. A police car was parked outside, its lights flashing, and a figure stood by the open door, a familiar face that sent chills down Tom's spine. It was the officer he had spoken to earlier. "What's he doing here?" Tom muttered, confusion washing over him. Jim, sensing the shift in atmosphere, moved to stand beside Tom, eyes narrowing. What the hell is going on? Before Tom could answer, the officer approached the front door, knocking loudly. Jim's demeanor shifted from anger to sheer panic. "Tom, we can't let him in. Not now." Tom felt a rush of adrenaline. "Jim, I don't know what's going on, but if he's here, we have to face it." Tom opened the door, bracing himself for the confrontation. "Officer, what's wrong?" The officer's expression was serious. "I need to speak with you both. It's about the investigation into Jim's daughter." Tom turned to Jim, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Jim, what do you know?" "I told you to leave it alone," Jim hissed, eyes darting to the side. The officer stepped inside, his tone low and serious. "We're looking into some new evidence that's come to light regarding the accident. I need both of you to be honest with me." "What kind of evidence?" Tom asked, his mind racing. "There's been talk of a witness who claims to have seen someone tampering with scene just before the accident," officer said, his gaze flicking between Tom and Jim. "This witness believes the accident wasn't an accident at all." Tom felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" The officer continued, "There are inconsistencies in reports that suggest foul play. We're piecing together a timeline, and it points to someone who might have had a motive." Jim's face was a mask of horror. "No, it can't be true." "Jim, what aren't you telling me?" Tom pressed, sensing gravity of the moment. "I don't know anything," Jim shouted, but Tom could see the cracks forming in his facade. Tom's mind raced with the implications. If someone had tampered with scene, that changed everything. It shifted focus from Jim's grief to a potential conspiracy surrounding the accident. "Jim, you have to tell us what you know. This could change everything for you and your family," Tom insisted, urgency in his voice clear. Jim's expression was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, guilt. I can't go back to that place. I've tried to forget, but you can't run from the truth, Jim. If there's something more going on here, you have to face it," Tom urged, desperation creeping into his tone. The officer shifted, his demeanor tense. "We believe you might be a key part of this investigation. If you know something, now is time to speak up." With a deep breath, Jim seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging. I don't remember everything, but I remember someone being there that night. Someone who shouldn't have been." Tom's heart raced. "Who?" "I can't say. I was scared," Jim said, his voice trembling. "What if they come after me? After my family? Then we'll protect you, but you have to trust us," Tom said, stepping closer. "We need to know everything." The room was thick with tension, and Tom felt as if they were standing on the edge of a precipice, the ground crumbling beneath them. Suddenly, there was a loud bang outside, followed by shouting. All three men turned toward the window, and Tom's heart sank as he saw a group of men in dark clothing moving toward the house, their intentions clear. "Who are they?" Tom whispered, panic gripping him. "I don't know," Jim shouted, his voice rising in terror. "We have to get out of here." The officer moved swiftly, pulling his weapon. "Stay back," he commanded, positioning himself between Jim and the door. Tom felt adrenaline spike as the door splintered under the weight of a kick. The men surged into the house, their faces obscured by shadows and menace. "Get down!" the officer shouted, and Tom instinctively pushed Jim to the ground as chaos erupted around them. Tom's mind raced as he scrambled for cover, heart pounding in his chest. The tension was unbearable, the stakes higher than ever. Everything had just escalated into a fight for survival. As the chaos unfolded, Tom's thoughts were consumed by the shocking revelations. There were layers upon layers of secrets, each unraveling into deeper danger. Jim's past was not just a personal struggle. It was entwined with something far more sinister that could threaten everything he held dear. The confrontation was only just beginning, and Tom knew that this was only the start of a much darker journey. As the men stormed into the room, guns drawn and eyes filled with intent, Tom felt a surge of determination. He wouldn't let Jim go down without a fight. They would face this together, no matter the cost. But as the dust settled and the tension crackled in the air, one truth hung heavily between them. The fight for survival had only just begun. The door crashed open with a force that reverberated through the room. Tom's heart raced as adrenaline surged through him. The intruders stormed in, their faces obscured by dark masks. And in that moment, everything he knew became a blur of instinct and fear. "Get down!" the officer shouted again, his voice cutting through the chaos. Tom instinctively shielded Jim, pulling him closer to the ground as gunfire erupted. The sharp crack of shots echoed off the walls, punctuated by the shattering of glass and the splintering of wood. The living room transformed into a war zone, chaos and confusion swirling around them. "Tom, what's happening? Who are they?" Jim's voice trembled with terror, his eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't know," Tom replied, his mind racing. "But we have to get out of here. Now." The officer returned fire, shouting commands to the intruders, his gun steady in his hands. The men seemed unfazed, their movements calculated and precise. "Get to the back," the officer yelled, directing Tom and Jim toward the hallway. "I'll hold them off." "No," Tom insisted, glancing back at the officer. "You can't do this alone." But the officer's face was grim, filled with a resolve that sent chills down Tom's spine. "Just go. I'll cover you." With little choice, Tom grabbed Jim's arm, urging him down the narrow hallway that led to the kitchen. The sound of gunfire and shouting faded behind them, but Tom knew it was far from over. As they burst into the kitchen, Tom quickly scanned for an exit. "We need to find a way out." The back door was locked, and the only window was too small for both of them to fit through. Panic rose within him as he fumbled with the lock. "Help me," Tom urged, adrenaline fueling his urgency. Jim hesitated, his face pale with fear. "What if they find us? We can't just wait here." Tom shot back, finally managing to force the lock open. "We have to move." With a swift motion, Tom pushed the door open, heart racing as he stepped into the cool night air. The darkness outside was both a comfort and a danger. They were exposed now, but at least they were away from the chaos inside. "Where do we go?" Jim asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have to get to the car," Tom said, scanning the dimly lit street. "It's parked down the block." As they made their way cautiously down the street, Tom felt a sudden chill run down his spine. "Jim, keep your head down. We don't know if they're still coming after us." Just as they rounded the corner, a figure emerged from the shadows, nearly colliding with them. Tom's heart stopped as he recognized the person. "Claire!" he exclaimed, relief and dread washing over him. Claire was Jim's wife, and the last thing Tom wanted was to put her in danger. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern, as she took in their disheveled appearance. "We need to leave, Claire." "It's not safe," Tom urged, glancing back toward Jim's house. "They're after us." "What do you mean they're after you?" Claire asked, her voice rising in panic. "What happened?" "Not now, Claire," Jim snapped, his fear morphing into anger. "We need to go." Tom's heart sank as he watched the tension between Jim and Claire. "We need to get out of here first. We can talk later." Claire looked between the two men, confusion and fear etched across her face. "I can't just leave without knowing what's going on." "Trust us, Claire. We'll explain everything when we're safe," Tom pleaded, knowing that their time was running out. Jim's expression was hardened, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "We're not having this discussion right now." Just as the tension reached a breaking point, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Tom's heart raced as he instinctively pulled Claire and Jim toward the nearby alley, hoping to find a way to evade their pursuers. As they huddled together in the shadows, footsteps grew louder, and Tom felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "We need to be quiet," he whispered, straining to hear what was happening behind them. The voices were indistinct, but growing closer, filled with a sense of menace that sent a shiver down Tom's spine. "They went this way," one of the intruders shouted, the desperation in his voice palpable. "Where are we going?" Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Tom admitted, trying to think quickly. "Maybe we can find a place to hide until they pass." Suddenly, Jim pulled away from them, his expression resolute. "I'll create a distraction. You two get away." "No, Jim, you can't," Tom protested, fear clawing at his chest. "Just go," Jim insisted, his voice filled with urgency. "I can't let them take you, Claire. Don't you dare do this," Claire shouted, her voice breaking. "We're in this together." But Jim shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "I can't lose you. I'll be fine. Just trust me." Tom felt helpless, torn between the need to protect Jim and the urgency to escape. "We can't leave you behind." But Jim had already slipped back into the darkness, determination etched on his face. Tom turned to Claire, panic rising within him. "We have to go. Now?" With heavy hearts, Tom and Claire made their way down the alley, glancing back toward the direction Jim had disappeared. The weight of their choices hung heavily in the air, and Tom couldn't shake the feeling that they were running from something far greater than just physical danger. "Tom, what if something happens to him?" Claire's voice was shaky, filled with fear. "I don't know," Tom admitted, guilt gnawing at him. "But we have to keep moving. If we stop now, we're all dead." As they emerged onto a quieter street, Claire stopped, turning to Tom with a fierce look in her eyes. "You need to tell me what's going on. Why are they after us? Why is Jim acting like this?" Tom hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's complicated. Jim has a past, a history that he hasn't been honest about. He was involved in something dark." "What do you mean?" Claire pressed, confusion and hurt mingling in her voice. "There was an accident, and I think it's tied to what happened to your daughter," Tom said carefully. Claire's expression shifted from confusion to pain, the reality of their situation crashing down on her. "What are you saying? That he had something to do with it?" "I don't know," Tom replied, frustration bubbling within him. "But he was there. I think he's been hiding the truth from all of us." Claire looked away, tears brimming in her eyes. "How can I trust you? You're telling me my husband might be involved in something terrible." "I'm not saying he is," Tom insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "But we need to understand what happened. He might be in danger himself." Claire's eyes hardened, a flicker of resolve igniting within her. "I need to confront him. I can't keep running without knowing the truth." Tom shook his head. "That's not safe, Claire. We need to stick together and figure this out. I won't let him face this alone," Claire shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet night. "He's my husband, and I deserve to know what's going on." Tom felt his frustration boil over. "You think I want to keep this from you? You think I enjoy being in this position? This isn't just about you and Jim anymore. It's about survival." Claire's face fell, hurt flashing across her features. "You think I don't care about that? I'm scared, Tom. Scared for my husband, scared for us. But if there's something he's hiding, I have to know." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the alley behind them, jolting both of them from their argument. Tom instinctively grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her deeper into the shadows. "We need to move. Now?" As they slipped back into the darkness, Tom's mind raced. The conflict between them was only a reflection of the chaos unfolding around them. Each step forward felt fraught with danger, and the stakes were higher than ever. They stumbled into an abandoned warehouse, the air thick with dust and the remnants of past lives. Tom closed the door behind them, heart pounding as they surveyed their surroundings. "Do you think they'll find us here?" Claire asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Tom admitted, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we need to figure out a plan." As they moved further inside, Tom felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. The reality of their situation was suffocating, and the unresolved conflicts threatened to consume them. "Tom, what if Jim is caught?" Claire's voice trembled with fear. "What if he's hurt?" "I don't know," Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we have to stay focused. We can't afford to fall apart now." As they searched the dimly lit space, Tom stumbled upon a hidden door at the back of the warehouse. Curiosity piqued. He motioned for Claire to follow him as they opened the door to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. "Should we go down there?" Claire asked, apprehension in her voice. "We need to check it out," Tom said, his heart racing as he descended the stairs. The air grew cooler as they reached the bottom of the stairs, revealing a dimly lit underground passage lined with old crates and machinery. Tom felt a sense of unease wash over him. "This doesn't feel right," Claire said, glancing around nervously. "Stay close," Tom replied, his instincts heightened. As they moved deeper into the passage, Tom's mind raced with possibilities. What if this place held answers to the mysteries surrounding Jim's past? What if it revealed the truth about the accident that had torn their lives apart? Suddenly, Tom spotted something glinting in the dim light. He knelt down to examine it, revealing a small tarnished locket. Opening it, he found a faded photo of a young girl. "Who is this?" Claire asked, peering over his shoulder. "I don't know," Tom replied, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. "But I think it's connected to Jim somehow." As they continued to explore, they uncovered more items: a stack of old photographs, a journal filled with hastily scribbled notes, and a collection of strange documents that hinted at something sinister. "This is disturbing," Claire murmured, flipping through the journal. "It's like Jim was involved in something he couldn't escape, or something that caught up with him," Tom said, dread creeping into his voice. Claire's face paled as she absorbed the implications of their findings. What if he was involved in something dangerous? What if he's still involved? Tom shook his head, frustration bubbling to the surface. We have to confront him when we find him. We can't let fear control us. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the passageway, sending a jolt of fear through them. Tom and Claire exchanged panicked glances, hearts racing. Hide, Tom whispered urgently, pulling Claire behind a stack of crates. They held their breath as the footsteps grew louder, the tension palpable as they listened to muffled voices approaching. Search every corner of this place, one of the men commanded, his voice dripping with menace. They can't have gotten far. Tom's heart raced as he peeked around the crate, spotting a group of men moving through the passage. They were armed and looked determined, their intentions clear. Can we sneak past them? Claire whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know, Tom replied, weighing their options. We could try to make a run for it, but we'd need to create a distraction. Maybe we can knock something over? Claire suggested, glancing around the dimly lit space. Tom nodded, formulating a plan. Okay, on the count of 3, we'll create a noise and slip past them. As they prepared to execute their plan, the tension in the air felt electric. 1, 2, 3. Tom threw a nearby crate against the wall, the sound reverberating through the passage. Over there, one of the intruders shouted, their attention drawn away from Tom and Claire. Go, Tom urged, pulling Claire forward as they sprinted down the passage, hearts pounding in their chests. They raced toward the exit, adrenaline fueling their desperation. Just as they reached the doorway, a shot rang out behind them, narrowly missing Tom's shoulder. Keep going, Tom shouted, adrenaline coursing through him as they burst out into the night. As they ran down the street, the sounds of chaos echoed behind them. Tom felt a surge of determination mixed with fear, their lives hanging by a thread. We have to get to my car, he urged, leading Claire through the darkened streets. Do you think they'll follow us? Claire panted, glancing back nervously. Probably, Tom replied grimly. But we can't stop. Not now. They finally reached Tom's car, and he fumbled with the keys, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Come on, he muttered, adrenaline surging as he finally unlocked the door. Get in, he urged Claire, pushing her into the passenger seat before diving into the driver's side. Just as he started the engine, a loud crash echoed from behind them. Tom glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart dropping as he saw the intruders sprinting toward them. Scene, a tense escape unfolds as they flee their pursuers. Go, 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 Claire shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Tom slammed the gas pedal down, and the car surged forward just as the intruders reached the road. The tires screeched as they raced away, heart pounding with fear and relief. What's going to happen now? Claire asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Tom admitted, gripping the steering wheel tightly. But we need to find a safe place to regroup and figure out our next move. Scene, the after effects of their harrowing escape loom large. As they sped through the night, Tom couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. They had escaped, but for how long? We can't keep running forever, Claire said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. What if they find us again? We'll figure it out, Tom replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But we need to confront Jim first. We have to know the truth. Scene, the search for answers brings them closer together amidst the chaos. The drive was tense, filled with unspoken fears and unresolved tensions. Tom's mind raced with questions, and he knew they had to confront Jim when they found him. As they entered the city, the weight of their circumstances pressed heavily on them. They were entangled in a web of secrets, and the truth loomed just out of reach. Tom, do you think Jim will understand? Claire asked, breaking the silence. I hope so, Tom replied, glancing at her. But we have to be prepared for anything. We don't know what he's been involved in. Scene, the impending confrontation sets the stage for deeper exploration. They finally reached a safe house, an old friend's empty rental property. Tom parked the car and turned to Claire, his heart heavy with the gravity of their situation. Are you ready for this? He asked, searching her eyes for reassurance. I don't know, Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can't keep running. I need to know what's happening. Tom nodded, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. They were standing on the precipice of danger, and the truth could shatter everything they knew. Scene, the tension in the safe house becomes palpable. As they stepped inside the safe house, the air felt thick with uncertainty. Tom's mind raced with possibilities as they settled into the dimly lit space. What do we do now? Claire asked, wrapping her arms around herself as if seeking comfort. We wait for Jim, Tom replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. And when he arrives, we confront him. No more secrets. Scene: the waiting game intensifies the stakes. Hours passed, the silence in the room growing heavier with each minute. Tom couldn't shake the feeling of dread, the anticipation of the unknown weighing on him. "Tom," Claire said softly, breaking the silence. "What if Jim doesn't show up?" "He will," Tom replied, trying to reassure both Claire and himself. "He has to." But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The threats closing in on them felt more real than ever, and the suspense hung in the air like a thick fog. Scene: the night deepens, and the atmosphere grows increasingly tense. As the night wore on, the tension became unbearable. Tom paced the room, every sound echoing like a distant reminder of the danger they faced. "Maybe we should go look for him?" Claire suggested, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "No," Tom replied firmly. "It's too dangerous out there. We need to stay put." Scene: the impending storm amplifies the fear. Outside, the wind began to howl, echoing the storm brewing within Tom. He glanced at the clock, heart racing. They couldn't afford to let fear control them, but every moment spent waiting felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a loud crash from outside jolted them both. "What was that?" Claire whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay here," Tom instructed, moving toward the window to peer outside. Scene: their fears manifest as danger closes in. He gasped as he caught sight of dark figures approaching the safe house, their intentions clear. "Claire, we have to move." "Now? Where do we go?" Claire asked, panic rising in her voice.